Today's video is all about knowing if the grid on Bitwig is for you or not. I get the feeling that Bitwig's popularity is increasing over time, but there are still many people that feel a bit intimidated by something like the grid. And well, at the end is one of the selling points. So in this video we'll talk about the pros and the cons of the grid, and I will also show you that Bitwig without the grid is still very powerful. So let's start. The grid is a modular environment where you can put different modules to create signal paths and build almost anything you want. That's why we have three types of grid, because we can create node effects, audio effects, and also instruments. Like me that did something similar to Infiltrator. Go watch this video. And as you can see, the three types of grids are basically the same. The only difference is the type of device. So the pros of the grid for me are the following. First of all, you have a different sound design workflow that's closer to modular. This is great if you want to see everything that you are doing, the signal paths, the inner workings, and more. Of course, it has oscillators, filters, modulators, and everything else, but it also has different modules that affect the signal flow. And this is not only great for sound, because all of these devices can affect also modulators. For instance, Bitwig has something that's called the math modulators, but I have always found them a little bit tedious to set up. Instead, on the grid, I find it so much easier to create different modulation combinations. In fact, one of my favorite ways of using a grid is to build complex modulation sources. And I have made a video about it, go watch it right here. Other thing that I find amazing is that besides all of these complex devices, we have oscillators, filters, envelopes, wave shapers, and everything else. We even have effects like delays, the chorus, the flanger, and the phaser. So what to do with the grid? Well, anything. You can create simple instruments, or as I mentioned, you can create complete songs on it. And effects and sequencers and everything else. And to be honest, nowadays I'm using more and more the grid as an instrument, because it lets you layer more than one oscillator with everything that you want. I'm comparing it, of course, with Polymer, which lets you use only one oscillator, and of course the sub-oscillator. I'm even using the grid more and more for FM. Don't get me wrong, I love Phase 4, it's one of my favorite devices on Bitwig. But setting up FM in the grid is really easy. It would be amazing if you leave a comment saying if you prefer using the grid or not, and if you use it, for what purposes. While you're at it, give a like to the video and also subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Now, despite everything that I said, Bitwig without the grid still has a lot of advanced features. And for me, some of these features are harder to program inside the grid. On every device, we can put any modulator that we want to control any parameter. Besides that, you can put any device, especially effects, inside another device. For instance, we can put the reverb inside this polysynth. So now the modulators that are on polysynth can affect also the parameters that are on the reverb. And that's the same for everything that's inside polysynth and also inside reverb. Even if I'm using the grid to build instruments, I'm going to put effects inside the container of the grid. And that's other thing with the grid, it doesn't have every effect. I know that maybe some effects are not viable to put inside it, but again, why not? And why not the Beat Crusher, for instance, or Blur, or anything else? So if you want to use other effects, you'll have to have this hybrid kind of workflow. Now, in terms of node effects, there are some that cannot be replicated on the grid, at least not as easy. For instance, dribble. Very fun. Or the note repeat with the Euclidean mode. Now, I know that the level of sequencing and note effects that you can achieve inside the grid are huge. But there are different node devices that will let you also create very complex and even more advanced stuff, especially thanks to layering and other node effect containers. For instance, with the simpler arpeggiator, we can create complex polyrhythmic sequencers. I don't know, I find it to be more straightforward with the node effects. I have a whole video on containers, go watch it and you will see why sometimes I prefer to use containers instead of the grid. And maybe you just want a straightforward GW, and for that you don't need to use the grid all the time. And I think that the people at Bitwig knows that not everyone wants to use the grid. And for me the confirmation of that is not only Polymer but also Filter Plus and Sweep. These devices are designed to use grid modules without the grid. I mean, before 5.1 you will have to use an effect grid just for one small wave shaper, and now you can just use Filter Plus and Sweep. So if you just want to use wave shapers, filters, envelopes and oscillators, you don't need a grid. At the end, it's just about taste. The grid is amazing and that's why it's one of the selling points of Bitwig, but as you can infer, Bitwig will be still my favorite DAW even without the grid. So don't feel bad if you feel that the grid is not for you. I hope you like this video, especially if you're a beginner considering switching to Bitwig. Thank you so much for watching, I will see you next time and bye bye.